Tony, yes. Beatley Tone's Beatles channel, hosted by none other than Tony himself, has come up with a very cool thread, folks. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Matthew Street channel. And, folks, I don't do a lot of threads. I don't do a lot of contest things or tags. There's so many of them out there. I'm subscribed to so many channels that to try to get involved in all of them, it'd just be overwhelming. So I limit myself. It has to be something I really want to do. And you know what? Once in a while, I'll jump on a contest or a thread, and I haven't done one for a little bit here, but my friend and yours, Tony, over at Beatley Tone's Beatles channel, link to the main original video will be below, has come up with a very unique Beatles-related thread. Rather than a Beatles thread or this Beatles or that Beatles or Beatles Live or Beatles Singles or whatever, he's come up with the Solo Beatles thread. And I said, yes, that's something I can sink my teeth into. There's only 9 questions. It's straightforward, very easy. You don't have to have a master's degree or a doctorate to figure out the contest and the thread and how to get things to put in place here. It was very easy, very simple. I could grab what I needed, done. So thank you, Tony. So I'm happy to be part of this thread. So let's go. And you should participate too. Get over Tony's channel. Link will be below to the main video. Get over there, look at the video, subscribe to his channel, say hello. What is the first solo Beatles album you ever owned? Well, this will take me back and then bring me forward, because if you saw one of my recent videos about seeing the Beatles on the Ed Sullivan Show, I talked about the 60th anniversary of their arrival this week. And I talked about my 3 older cousins, 3 boys, a 12-year-old, an 8-year-old, and a 5-year-old who in 64 were really into the Beatles, especially the 12-year-old. He was the main one. He was the one his 2 younger brothers and I looked up to. And he was the one that collected Beatles singles, Beatle albums, was into the memorabilia. He wanted Beatle boots. He wanted the long hair and everything. And throughout the 60s, he got into the 60s music. Beatles, Stones, The Who, the American bands. He was into it. And he came of age in the 60s. So when the 70s rolled around and the Beatles had broken up, he was still into the music all throughout the 70s, and certainly the Beatles solo music. And he had a good relationship with my parents, who by the time they were coming up into 1970 were in their late 30s by then, but he still had a good relationship with his aunt and uncle, and he would share music and recommend music to them. And my parents were pretty hip music-wise back then, so they would sometimes take him up on his suggestions. Well, one of the albums he suggested they buy is this one, Paul McCartney's first album. So my parents bought this album in 1970 when it first came out, and they liked it and such and listened to it based on my cousin's recommendation. But within a year or so of them getting it, guess whose 9 to 10-year-old son took over this album and it became his first Beatles solo album? Me, Matthew Street. They gave me this album. I put it as part of my collection at that time when I was getting heavily into the Beatles and 60s pop coming into the early 70s there. And this was the first solo Beatles album that I owned and took into my collection. First McCartney album. And I, to this day, love it and love this album. Number 2, what is the latest solo Beatles album or piece of music you bought? Well, I have one coming. I did order. I'm not getting the vinyl set because to me it's underwhelming. I don't need another to spend a fortune on Band on the Run. But as you know, the new whatever Band on the Run is coming with the underdubbed masters and all that. So just to have it, I ordered the double CD. Still waiting for it. No, I have not received it yet. So that's the latest one I've technically bought. But the latest one I have in my possession is Rewind Forward by Ringo. Okay, I have the vinyl here somewhere as well. But I did get the cassette, and here it is, Rewind Forward. This is, out of the 4 EPs he's released thus far, this is in my top 2. I'll say this is one of the better ones. So I was happy when Ringo released this. Latest Beatles solo acquisition. Okay, what is your favorite album, solo Beatles album by John, Paul, George, and Ringo? Well, okay, let's go. For John, no-brainer for me. I know most people would pick Imagine or Plastic Ono Band, but I have always loved Walls and Bridges. I was at that age when it came out, 12 going on 13, and I bought it. I have the original flip one with the flip pictures here. I love Walls and Bridges. Always have, always will. This is my favorite John Lennon album, and I can't wait. Hopefully someday a deluxe copy comes out. My favorite Paul McCartney album is, well, let me show one first. This is pretty much my favorite Wings album / Paul McCartney. But if we want to get technical, my favorite Paul McCartney album is Ram. So it's this and Back to the Egg, but I'll call this my favorite Paul McCartney album. How's that? My favorite George album. Now, most people would pick this, and I'm sure the majority will pick this. And I love this album, folks. It's big. It's bombastic. It's full. It's a lot of stuff here. It's as thick as a brick. You know, it's probably one of the best, if not the best, Beatles solo album ever. However, sentimental favorite, my favorite, has always been this one, Cloud 9. Right up there for me. I love Cloud 9. When this came out after George's 5-year layoff, it knocked me out of the ballpark. I just loved his voice on this. I loved that he was rocking on this. Some power pop. It's great. Love Cloud 9. Doing my best here to get through this, folks. And my favorite Ringo album of all time is, I love Ringo, 73. You know, I was 11 going on 12 when I was 12 when that album came out, and I love it and still love it to this day. But after his big layoff, when this album came out and I saw him on this tour, Time Takes Time in 1992, this is the album for me. This is Ringo at his finest. Great songwriters, great producers, power pop, jangle pop, pop music, rock music. This is the one. Time Takes Time is my absolute favorite Ringo album. Okay, your least favorite solo Beatles albums. Okay, for John, that's a no-brainer, okay? If we're not including the experimental albums or the wedding album, that's another weird one. This one, I'm sorry, folks. My least favorite John album. There's nothing more you can say about it. My least favorite Paul, you know, I thought about it. There's not a lot of, even Pipes of Peace, as much as I don't care for it, I think it's Tug of War light. There's still some good songs on Pipes of Peace, and it can be a pleasant listen on occasion. Press to Play has grown on me. Driving Rain, I don't really care for. There's a few songs on it I like. But the one album I never listened to, and someone gave me this CD, and I haven't even opened it yet, folks. It's still in the shrink wrap. It's this one. It still has the type sticker and the price on it, I believe. And it's just in the shrink. Never have opened it. I've sampled it on Spotify. Doesn't do anything for me. Kisses on the bottom. Least favorite George Harrison album, Extra Texture. I Love You. I like Tired of Midnight Blue. This Guitar Can't Keep From Crying. That's it. It's not a good album. Okay, and Ringo, easy, no-brainer. Ringo the Fourth, my least favorite Ringo album. Cover stinks, and the music is something I never go back to. I just don't listen to. There's a million other things by Ringo I can listen to before I listen to Ringo the Fourth. All right, let's be honest. My favorite solo Beatles book, there's a lot you could pick. I mean, there's, you know, so many great Paul McCartney books solo. George's I Me Mine was a classic. Paul's Lyrics book, which recently came out, is a classic, instant classic. A lot of good stuff, especially in the Paul world. Ringo's released some really good books on his own. But the one that really had me engrossed, I really enjoyed reading it from cover to cover. I couldn't put it down because it had so much great information about this period of John's career, was by Ken Sharp. Check out this book, folks. It's called Starting Over, The Making of John Lennon and Yoko Ono's Double Fantasy. Folks, this book, it was engrossing to me. Ken interviewed many, if not all, the people involved in the making of Double Fantasy, those sessions that led to Double Fantasy and eventually Milk and Honey. It's all laid out in here. Great interviews with all the people one-on-one about what those sessions were all about. You really get a sense for where John was at this time and what he was thinking and feeling, and the joy these people had working with John during these final sessions right at the end of John's life. So I got to say, there's a million solo Beatles books I love, but this one really meant a lot to me when I was reading it. I was engrossed with this book, folks, and I highly recommend it. By Ken Sharp, Starting Over, The Making of John Lennon and Yoko Ono's Double Fantasy. Highly recommended, folks, for reading of a Beatles solo book. Number 6, show a solo Beatles item or an artifact that's not an album. Well, I have it right here. This Ringo Starr tour shirt, and I'll turn it around here so you can see the back a little bit. All right, from his 2001 tour. And the reason this is so special, I'm sure you're saying, why are you showing a Ringo tour shirt? This tour shirt was actually owned by Ringo Starr himself. This is Ringo keeps a collection of all his stuff. This was in Ringo's personal collection. Someone I know gifted this to me. I had done some nice things for them, so they did something nice for me. And all the wording about it is up here. I'll take it off and read it to you. This is Ringo's personally owned tour shirt from 2001. This tour shirt belonged to Ringo Starr. It was sold through Julian's Auctions in December of 2015. The shirt came from Ringo himself. It was the first time that any of the Beatles agreed to sell off some of their personal items at an auction. Money raised went to the Lotus Foundation, which is Ringo's charity, and all the items were selected by Ringo himself from his homes in London, Monaco, and Beverly Hills. So Ringo took this from his personal collection and donated it for an auction with Julian's Auctions to help his Lotus Foundation charity. So, and I received the shirt, and I have it proudly on display down here in my room. A lot of things I could have shown you, but I thought this would be kind of a cool way to highlight Ringo and show something very unique for that question. So that was a good question from Tony. Number 7, your favorite solo Beatles box set. Folks, I'm not even going to try to take this all out. This thing is so thick, has so much to it. Well, all I'm going to tell you is this, which weighs about 20 pounds, is my favorite solo Beatles box set. The Wings Over America super duper uber deluxe box set. There are books in here. There's artifacts in here. There's replicas of tour books in here, ticket stubs, posters, plus the music is in here. It's just unbelievable. The quality care, quality control, tender loving care put into this box set. Folks, get this if you can. I mean, you're not going to be able to even read all this, but it's just amazing what is in here. Okay, I don't know what you're going to be able to see or not see, but it's absolutely beautiful what you're receiving in here. It's just, any of you that have it can attest to it and vouch for me here. This box set, Wings Over America, is my absolute favorite solo Beatles box set. Oh, weighs a ton. Could do some curls with it. Okay, number 8, 2 more to go. Your favorite solo Beatles live set. A lot of people have chosen that, Wings Over America. There's so many you could choose, but folks, I'm going to go with this one because it's one of his most recent ones, and this was one of the final times live that I felt Paul's voice was truly still strong, still ringing true, and I love Paul, and I'm happy he's still out there. Hope to see him one more time before it's too late, but I love Amoeba gig. I'm going to pick this as my favorite solo Beatles live set. Paul, this is 2007, so it's a few years ago now, but it's fairly recent. And man, he is cooking on this. He is cooking on this set, folks. Absolutely. He's just unbelievable. I happen to have the colored limited edition vinyl. Here's the hype sticker. Love it. Great show. If you haven't heard it yet, get Amoeba Gig. It's out. The full thing is out, the full concert, and it's absolutely fantastic. And I'm picking that as my favorite live solo Beatles set. And last but not least, show 3 non-LP singles. Well, I have several. I don't have everything. I'm not a completist. My honorable mention will be this one. I don't know if it was really a single, but this little thing I got in the UK when I lived over there in the service for over 2 years. It's John Lennon, Elton John. It's John's set on 28th November, 1974. So we're coming up on 50 years. When he went on stage at Madison Square Garden with Elton and played 2 or 3 songs. They're all on this little single right here. And it was never really on a LP, I'll say. So that's my honorable mention. Love that. All John's stuff at Madison Square Garden with Elton. But the 3 I'll pick are these 3 because they just happen to be favorites of mine. John Lennon, this is my original Instant Karma. 1. I will pick Once Upon a Long Ago by Paul McCartney. Love that song. And last but not least is Girls' School, which was the American single in 1977. The rest of the world got Mulligan Tire, which was a smash hit for Paul, written by Paul and Denny. But Wings' Girls' School was such a rocker. When I was in high school, that song did well here in the United States, made top 40, and I have the picture disc and the single of it, and I absolutely love it. So I'll pick that one. So that's it, folks. I know I went 15 minutes, but thank you to Tony, Beatley Tones Beatles channel. Check him out. He's a great guy, wonderful, wonderful person. And I will put the link to the original video below, and I hope you'll enjoy this video. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.